quite long today. Okay, good morning. So we're doing Rambam chapter 16 of the Laws of Shabbos. Today is for the 7th of Elul, August 24th, and we are at 12 o'clock. We're going to be YouTubing live. We're going to have the lecture today YouTube live on the same website. Okay, let's go. So makim shaloi hukafladira. So now we're going to go into the laws. We've been talking about a private domain and public domain and caring for one to another. Now we're going to talk about, we spoke earlier and we said that a fenced area, which is not made for living, if it is a certain size, it's a carmelist. It's not considered a private domain. If it's smaller, then it's considered a private domain. So a place which is not surrounded for living, rather, it is used literally for its air. For example, you have gardens, orchards, or a place like a park, for example. Or if you put a fence around a large area to guard it, if there are 10 tefachim, if the walls are 10 handbreadths high or more, this is like a private domain to make you liable from taking from there into a public domain, or public domain into there. And you cannot carry inside, even though it's fenced, unless there is base sasayim, the amount of 2 sa, we'll talk about that soon, or less. However, if there is more than that measurement, then it's forbidden, and it's a carmelist, it's forbidden, you're not allowed to carry inside of this fenced area. Similarly, a post which is 10 high and wide, so you have a platform which is 10 high and wide more than base sasayim, wide base sasayim, which is the amount of, we'll see later how to calculate that, this is amount which is covered with 2 sa of produce, you can carry in all of it. If it is bigger than that, you cannot carry except within the 4 cubits that you are sitting. A stone in the ocean, in the sea, which was higher, which is lower than 10, you can carry from there into the sea, and from the sea into there, because it's all a carmelist. It's higher than 10. If it's more than 4 by 4, it's a private domain. You can carry in all of it, but you can't take from it to the sea and the sea into it. If it is more than this amount that we're going to measure in law number 3, even though it is a private domain, since you cannot carry it in it more than 4 amas, like a carmelist, because it's considered to be too similar to a public domain. However, you can carry from there to the sea or the sea to it, because this is something which is not very unusual, and therefore the rabbis didn't make a decree. What is a base sa? What is this measurement that we're talking about? 50 amas by 50 amas. 50 cubits by 75 feet by 75 feet is a base sa. Comes out, base sasayim is going to be 5,000 amma squared, 5,000 amma area. And any place that has this measurement, so you're going to basically have any place that has this measurement, whether it is square or it's which is 70 and a little bit by 70 a little bit, whether it's round or any other shape, this is called a base sasayim. Okay. So that is this area. A place which is surrounded and it has this amount and is not for living. If it is long, double the width, for example, it's like 100 by 50, like the Mishkan, then you can carry it. But if it is longer, more than twice the width, even 1 amma, you cannot carry in it except for 4 amas, because 4 cubits, because they didn't make the base sasayim, which because the base sasayim, this measurement, which is used for air, like other fields, this is like the chatzar hamishkan. This is like the tabernacle size. Okay. So if it happens to be like the tabernacle, then you can carry in it. A place which is surrounded not for living. So again, if it's like there's a house there and this is your yard, then you can do it. But if we're talking about fields, parks. Okay, a place which is surrounded not for living. If there is a break in the fence, more than 10 amas, which is 15 feet, height 10 tefachim, and you built it, and you put it for the purpose of living, then you can carry in anything. And even if an amma broke and you fixed it and you put it there for the intention of living there, and then the amma didn't, and you finish until you did 10 ammas, then you can carry in the whole thing, even though it could be a huge area. A place which is more than Beis Hasayim, more than this measurement we mentioned earlier, 500 square feet. 5,000 square feet. If you, we said, 5,000, what was the measurement we gave?
Whatever that is, yeah.
We said 5,000
50
square
by
amma.
50.
Okay.
Is that right?
What? 70 by 70 and a little bit. Okay. A place which is more than Beis Hasayim. A place that's more than Beis Hasayim, and you surround it. If you planted most of it, it now becomes a garden. If you planted some of it, if you planted from the Beis Hasayim, then you can carry in the whole thing. And if the area that you planted is designated as a planting area is more than the measurement, then you can't carry in the whole thing. If you planted in most of it, it is like a field, and you can. However, if you put trees in it, I guess, in the majority of it, it's like a field, and you can carry in the whole thing.
So I lost my place.
Middle of six.
It says, if it is sowed, if that minority area is sowed, it is 2 seah permissible. If the minority part is sowed, it is larger than 2 seah.
Yeah.
It is forbidden to
Then
carry.
it's forbidden to carry. And what's the next one?
If the majority is planted with trees.
Trees. Okay. Yeah.
You're right. I'm sorry.
All right. Now, if it's full of water, even if it is very, very deep, if it is usable, then this is like trees, and you can carry in the whole thing. And if it's not usable, then you can't carry except for 4 cubits. A place which is surrounded not for the sake of a house, which has more than 3 sin, and you call it the house of a sa, that allows it because it's roofed. A base sa is roofed. That allows it because the roof can change its status. If
It was completely breached.
So if the wall was breached to a courtyard, and the courtyard's open, the courtyard is permitted the way it was, so even though you're opening something to it. And now we're going to introduce a karpef. How does it translate karpef? The field part is
I mean, breach is still
forbidden.
permissible as previously.
Yeah, and
Enclosure also previously. Base.
And the place that was previously forbidden is forbidden. Okay, if there's more than Beis Hasayim, and then you want to make it smaller with trees, it doesn't make it smaller. If you build a platform on the side of the wall, which is 10 tfachim, and it's wide 3 or more, this makes it smaller. Less than 3, it doesn't make it smaller, because anything that's less than 3 is considered part of the wall. And it's lavud means it's connected. It means it doesn't add to it. And similarly, if you make it far from the wall 3, and then you make a wall, that makes it smaller. Less than 3, it doesn't do anything. If you put concrete on the wall, even though it's not able to stand by itself, it needs the wall. Nevertheless, this makes the area smaller. If you have a mound around it, and then you put a fence within from 3 and on, that helps. If you make a wall next to the mound, it doesn't help, because you make a mechitza on top of a mechitza, you make a wall on top of a wall, it doesn't make it smaller. If the bottom mechitza is there, and the bottom mechitza
Settles into the ground.
And the top one is there, since you made the top one for a house, and there's only that, this helps, and you can carry in the whole thing. The area outside houses, behind the houses, more than a Beis Hasayim, you can't carry them, except for amas. And even if there was the house open to that area, and if the door is open to there, and afterwards you surround it with a wall, then that works as a dira, and you can carry in that. If you have this alley area which is open to the city, and from one side, and the other side it's open to the road that goes to the river, you can make a lechi, we'll introduce later, but it's like this post on one side, and you can carry in the whole thing, and from there to the city, and from the city into it. Somebody who was keeping Shabbos in a field, and he makes a little wall around him. If there is until Beis Hasayim, he can carry in the whole thing, and if it's more than that amount, he cannot carry except for 4 amos. And similarly, two people. But if 3 Jewish people are camping over there, then this is a caravan, and they can carry in the whole thing, even very, very far. And that's so as long that there is no remainder of the wall which is surrounding them. An area which has no vessels or anything, no they don't have any. They haven't settled. There's no area which they didn't settle. If it's more than that, then and they don't need it, then they cannot carry in the whole walled area except for 4 amos. And similarly, a child can be included in the 3 people who create the caravan status. 3 people who are three that they surrounded everything and they decided to rest, and afterwards one of them died. They can carry in the whole thing. 2 of them did it.
What did you say?
3 people. So basically, the rule is if you have a fenced area, you're camping, and you leave the whole area settled. So you make sure there's no area of circumference or square area which is more than a base sign, without any settlement parts of it, and there are 3 people, then you can carry in the whole thing, even if it's a child. Let's say they did it, and then one of them dies. Then it's still allowed to carry in the whole thing. If 2 people did it on more than the amount, and then afterwards a 3rd one comes, they can't do it because it's not the people living there that cause you to carry it. It's the fact that when you went into Shabbos, you settled it. 3 places which are surrounded not for living, next to each other, and they're open to each other. 2 of the outside ones are very wide and are very big, and the middle one is narrow. So it comes out the 2 ones. But for the 2 outside ones, there are posts. So you have basically 3 people in these 3 areas. There's 1 person in each one. It all becomes a caravan, and they can do whatever they want. If the middle one is very wide and the 2 ones are very narrow, so it comes out that the middle one has the 2 on the outside, then it is separate from them. So if it's in the middle, then you can include it. If the other ones are outside of it, and because the middle one is the large one, then you can't. And therefore, if 1 person is in each one can only do things if there's less than the measurement in their area. If there's 1 in each one and 2 in the middle, 1 in this one and 1 in this one and 2 in the middle, or 2 in this one and 2 in this one and 1 in the middle, then they can be included in the status of what's called a shiyara. A shiyara is like this temporary caravan house status. Every wall which cannot. Now, what is a wall? What is a fence? Any fence that cannot stand up to an average wind is not a fence. Any fence which is not made to stay there is not a fence. Any wall which is made only for privacy is not a wall. Any wall which is not 10 tefachim, 10 handbreadths or more, is not a wall. If you did a fence 5 and a separation 5, they can add to each other. Anything which has parutz merubah, which means there's more open than fence, is not a wall. However, if it's equal 50-50 open and standing, then it's permitted, so as long as you don't have any breaches which are more than 10 amos. But 10 amos, which is 15 feet, this is like an opening, and if this has a doorway, so this has to do with eruvs. Eruvs are essentially making a doorway. Even though there's more than 10, it doesn't lose its status of mechitza. And that's so as long as, so here's what the Rambam says. This has to do with the eruv. Eruv, essentially the string is a doorway. So actually, a lot of people will only have the string, they have to have a post every 15 feet. And so that's a big subject of debate. But you cannot have opening more than 15 feet unless it's a doorway, right? And if it's a doorway, then, so you can put a string, that creates a doorway. But the Rambam says you still need 51% walled. So that's another thing that a lot of mechitzas, according to the Rambam, and we'll see later, the eruv is only valid if there's actual 51% wall, and the string is on 49%.
Really?
So that's where like the Phoenix Eruv is vast majority wall. When do we say this? But other areas are not, and that's where you have communities where you have people who will carry and people who won't carry, and people who will say you can carry if you need to and rely on the lenient opinions, but you shouldn't carry if you don't need to.
God, I wonder what the Baltimore area is.
I don't know. It's quite common that cities use the freeway walls if it's available. It's funny because sometimes it comes out that you have a city which is a huge Eruv job, but it's very easy to do and very kosher. And you have a small town where they want to put an Eruv, what could it be? It's just a mile by mile, but it becomes very difficult because you're essentially allowing something which the Rambam and many opinions don't say qualifies. When do we say this? When the breach is from 3 tfachim and above. However, if there's a breach, any breach which is less than 3 tfachim, lower or less than 3 tfachim, this is permitted, even though there's more opening than wall, because anything less than 3, this is kolava. So if you have these walls, you need these walls to go around, and they don't need to be touching the ground, and similar to a sukkah. Now a sukkah has some similar ideas to this. For example, you surrounded it with reeds, and the reeds they have less than 3 handbreadths between each other, and there's not less than 3 handbreadths, right? So it's close enough. Or you did it with another type of reeds, and there's less than 3 tachim. This is considered a complete wall, even though these are just vertical posts. There's no horizontal posts, and you need it to be, each one has to be 10, or it has to be from the ground until the string above 10 if you did it with strings, because the mechitza, so all these measurements are the law from Moses at Sinai. So essentially, if you have a ground, you can put posts in the ground, or you can put posts going the other way, and they could be, as long as they're within 3 of each other, even though it's quite transparent, that is considered a valid fence for sukkah and for shabbos.
Do we derive the rules for a shul mechitza from this, or separate?
No, shul mechitza is different design. There's two. Shul mechitza is just so you can't see. So if you don't have women in the room, you don't need a mechitza. Or if the room is formatted in a way so you can't see. Now, what people did is they said, well, if it's on a different floor, it's not really in the same room. So that was somewhat of a loophole. Some of the rabbis say, hey, so as long as women's, so as long as, the dispute about a mechitza being 6 feet or 5 feet is basically if you're allowed to see women's faces or not. It's an ancient dispute of the purpose of the mechitza, if the purpose is not to socialize or not to see. And the Rebbe was very adamant that every mechitza, if you need to rely on the lesser opinion, you could rely. That's a valid opinion. But when you're building a mechitza, you should definitely rely on the higher opinion, especially because the Rebbe said nowadays there are women who biblically might need to cover their hair who don't cover their hair, or this or that. In other words, people are less. So
actually, you could see.
770 is very hard to see, but if it's on a different floor,
you could see.
well, 770 is basically
You could see
the windows are tinted,
They're tinted,
but even if the windows weren't tinted, when mechitzas are in balconies, they're out of your peripheral vision. In other words, you're not supposed to look up. So if you look up, that's on you. Okay, let's go.
Okay.
Correct. Chabad of Surfside also has a mechitza where 770 is actually very hard to see women. It's very hard to recognize somebody.
But there's a little thing on the bottom.
Yeah, it's very, very hard.
I see a woman sometimes.
Yeah, but it's very hard to recognize them. You can't even if your wife is there. If your wife is there, it's almost very, very difficult.
You just see a little person.
You could just see a silhouette.
A 3-year-old sitting her
Correct.
head.
So you could just see maybe little kids. There's this little thing. So the 770 mechitza is top kosher. It's a balcony and it's tinted window. It's very hard to see. Chabad of Surfside is very easy to see the women in the balcony. However, the seating of the men is in an area which you can't really see them. You're underneath. And the standing area, the pulpit, is in the middle, so you can see from there. But again, if someone's in a balcony, you don't have to look up. That's your choice to look up. But if someone's at eye level, then it's harder. Okay, so
Entryway.
so it's Tzuras HaPesach. So now this is the concept of an Eruv is based on a Tzuras HaPesach. And this is The concept of the Erev is if I have a doorway, I can have a doorway, right? So if I have a doorway, the doorway is part of the wall, and right? So this thing is even one post here, and a post on top. If it is the height of 2 posts, as long as it's 10 or more, and the one on top of them, even though it's not touching them, and even if there's many amas, since they're high enough, this is considered a doorway. And the doorway we're talking about needs to be strong enough to hold a door, even a screen door made out of hay. So that's what constitutes a tzuras HaPesach, which a tzuras HaPesach is the door frame, and that's what allows the Erev. A door which is round on top, if there is on the length of the round part 10 tefachim, then this is considered a tzuras HaPesach, a doorway. A tzuras HaPesach, what you made from the side, is not anything, because you don't make doorways in the corners. You make them in the middle. So you can make okay, now we're going to talk back to the walls. The walls can be made out of material, whether vessels, food, or even out of humans, even animals. And this is as long as they're tied and they can't move. So it's probably not nice to tie a human slave to make a thing, but that could potentially make one. Something which stands by itself is kosher. A mechitza which is made on Shabbos is not a mechitza. And if you make it by accident, then you can't. A wall which is made on Shabbos is not a wall. And if you make it on Shabbos by accident, then it is permitted. But that's so as long as you didn't make it for the person who's going to carry it. However, if you decided to make it on Shabbos to carry it, even though you did it by accident, or even if you did it on purpose, even though you didn't, you're not allowed to carry the whole day. You can make a mechitza of humans on Shabbos. This ones can stand as long as they don't know that they're standing for the mechitza. So you can tell a bunch of people to stand in that place, and you shouldn't put a person who wants to carry. It should be somebody who is just going to stand there for no reason. A tree which is on the ground giving shade, if the branches go all the way almost to the ground, then you can fill in things and tie it to the ground until it will stand. Like so, this is, let's say you have a willow, weeping willow, and they're almost like a round weeping willow, and you can tie them to the ground and fill them up.
Willow?
It's a type of tree which kind of looks like this, right? So you can tie that and then carry inside, and that is so long as it's not so big like base of sign. But if it's more than the base of sign, you can't carry it except in 4 cubits, because underneath is not a place where people live. So we covered a lot of laws. Now, believe it or not, we have another several chapters of laws regarding taking out one thing, and there's just so many laws about it. But that's what we have today. Now, the Erev goes in much greater detail about the things we learned today, but we'll get to the laws of Erev. All right, well, we'll see you in a couple hours.
Wow. What are we going to do now?
We're going to prepare. And you know what?